Good evening, everyone. Today, I wanted to talk about increasing your VA service-connected disability rating percentage. A few things I wanted to talk about before I start is I'm going to be reading from my Microsoft document, so bear with me, guys. And I'm going to be speaking about loopholes, pros and cons to the loopholes. One of the cons is that when you do file for an increase, just know that you will be opening yourself up to having your other service connected disabilities being looked over. And if you're not attending appointments or keeping up with your medications, anything like that, just know that your rating might drop. So be careful with that. If you're not 100% PT, permanent total, or IU, again, that increase might affect your other ratings or the current rating that you're trying to put in an increase for. So stay on top of your appointments, all right, guys? So let's start off. Word yourself correctly. You may have been hurt in the combat zone, overseas during training, and or while on active duty conducting some type of mandatory training. Do not let them know you have tried working out to feel better or have gone to see a therapist of your own. This will affect your claim. So word yourself correctly by stating it happened where it did and it has gotten worse. So what I mean by that is if you have had a pre-existing condition where it was a strain, or you've had a back strain, or you've had some type of mental trauma before you have joined the military, or any other pre-existing condition, you will not state that when you go in to talk to your primary care or to some type of specialist or psychologist. You will state that it happened overseas, because at the end of the day, you got hurt out there, and you don't know, you didn't diagnose yourself when you had that back strain, or you probably think you've had mental trauma. Don't hurt your case. If a doctor before joining the military didn't diagnose you with any type of mental trauma or a back strain or a herniated disc, at the end of the day, before you go to MEPS, these are pre-existing conditions that are gonna show up, that will if you don't have an outstanding recruiter, these are conditions that are going to be stated at MEPS. So if you don't diagnose yourself, okay? So just keep it the way it is. If you got hurt and you got diagnosed while you were on active duty, whether it was overseas, combat zone, during a training event, just state that, state that you got hurt then. If you try to seek therapy on your own, just know that you're affecting your own case, all right? Unless it's not being told by a private doctor, to do physical therapy, or the VA is not giving you physical therapy, doing it on your own might hurt your case. Get the doctor to help you out, to schedule a physical therapy for you, or see a psychologist on your own, private doctor. But don't diagnose yourself, and because diagnosing yourself might affect, so if you go in and tell them, yeah, I think I have PTSD, again, you're fucking yourself over. Let them give you the wording, all right? Just state exactly the requirements that, PTSD. If you have it, you have it, and you're going to get diagnosed for it. Another thing I wanted to talk about: do not file for an increase right after receiving a rating you disagree with. If you believe that you have a strong case, you have new evidence, such as a nexus letter or DBQ, then file for the notice of disagreement. If not, continue appointments, get a DBQ or nexus letter, or even have an outside doctor see you and make a diagnosis. Do not tell the private doctor you are pursuing a service connection. What I mean by this is, if you get a rating you disagree with, do not go and file for an increase right away, because it will affect you. The rating that, all the evidence that you had submitted, they already have it, So if you don't have a DBQ that they haven't seen, or a nexus letter that they have not seen, do not file for the increase. I would suggest, if your DBQ and your nexus letter is very strong, then put in for the notice of disagreement. A lot of organizations might say no. They might tell you just go for the increase, but notice of disagreement, it doesn't hurt your case. Don't submit in both, because then you're submitting medical evidence that you could use down the road to continue the case, or the notice of disagreement. But again, my suggestion is, gather that new evidence. If you don't have it, gather it. So gather the new evidence, and after a good 4 to 6 months, file it for an increase. If you already have that evidence, then go for the notice of disagreement. And I would suggest doing one by one. So whether the DBQ or the Nexus letter, or diagnosis, or medical paperwork that a private doctor has given you, then submit that paperwork, and see what could happen for you. One thing that I wanted to state with the notice of disagreement, I have had a buddy of mine that did win an appeal, and he did receive a great amount of retro money. But the only thing is what I'm saying is that, again, when you gather the medical evidence, make sure it's stated. The one problem that he had was that at MEPS, they were trying to say that he had a pre-existing condition. When he looked at his MEPS medical records, it showed that there was no pre-existing condition. So this is one of the medical evidence that he submitted to reverse the decision that they have made, and he got his rating increase, which allowed him to get to 100%. So again, be careful with what you submit. Research, do your homework, and educate yourself in regards to certain loopholes. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I filed for a notice of disagreement. When I went up to talk to Disabled American Veterans, which I am a member of, they suggested go for an increase, because in regards to my claim, I was not going to win a travel board. So I filed for the increase. I ended up getting the rating that I so rightfully deserve. And when the travel board came up, there was no point in fighting, and fighting to get any retro money or anything like that. I already got the increase that I wanted, and if I would have went for retro money, that would have been greedy. There's no point. Sometimes you just have to take, your losses, because in the end, I got the rating that I so rightfully deserve. So choose your battles. That's what I'm trying to explain by my sharing my experience. Choose your battles wisely. All right. Sometimes getting greedy might just get you nothing at all. Another way that I wanted to talk about, to increasing your service connections. Another way to increase your service connection rating is by filing for injuries you have received. If you worked on the flight line, or was a motorman or a tanker, then file for tinnitus and hearing loss. If your unit had mandatory training, such as 25-mile humps, carrying your rucksack with a flak jacket on and a SAPI place, then get yourself checked for your back, neck, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, ankles, knees. One or more will come back with a diagnosis where it might get you a service connection. So even smaller claims, even smaller percentages might help. So let's say you are at 70%, and you get a 10% for tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. At the end of the day, those 3 points, because again, the way the math work is not, you don't get 10%, which will add up to 80% on, for what you have. The way it works is 10% of that remaining 30%, which will only get you 3 points, will still remain at 70%, but it will be 73. Now you're only 2 points away. So again, another 10%, another 10% will put you over, that 75% percentage, which will get you to 80. All right. So again, the math is different when you are calculating your compensation rating. All right. So the smaller ratings does help, shin splints, hearing loss, tinnitus, carpal tunnel. It may be small to you guys, and you guys might be thinking, in the long, the shorter term, think outside of the box, These are other things that, you end up getting hurt anyways, no matter what. So put them in. It does not hurt. These smaller ratings do not hurt at all. Other things that you might be able to help you with your increase, IBS. Sometimes I know when I got sick when I was in Iraq, I ended up having the Nazaria virus. This Nazaria virus consisted of diarrhea, nausea. I wasn't able to hold down any liquids. So if you ate food by the locals outside of the wire in the sandbox because your unit did not have MREs to provide you with, or a meal, or you just developed an illness that made you nauseous, gave you diarrhea, you were unable to hold any food or liquid intake, then get a GI doctor. Go see a GI doctor. And a primary care will be able to refer you to them. At the end of the day, if they can't find virus or residuals of virus or even tapeworms or gastritis, at least you might be able to fall back on an irritable bowel syndrome. So your stomach might be fucked up no matter what, ever since you came back from overseas, from combat zone or being in Kuwait or Iraq, Afghanistan. Your stomach is going to be fucked up. My suggestion to you is, again, don't diagnose yourself, but go in and explain your symptoms, So if you are, shedding 8 times a day, sometimes you end up are unable to have any food intake or hold down any liquids. You shed everything out, you throw everything up. You might need IV fluids. Go to the ER, get taken care of. But irritable bowel syndrome is the max you could get for that is 30%, and it counts. It's a small percentage, but it counts. Another thing I wanted to talk about are the loopholes, the pros and cons to the loopholes. This is one of the pros and cons to loopholes. Now, the pro is if you have knee conditions such as a limitation of flexion, limitations of extension, or instability of the knee, you can file and get rated separately just for one knee. And if your other knee begins to experience the same conditions, then file that second knee as a secondary condition to your knee that originally was diagnosed with the 3 ratings that are suggested, which is the limitations of flexion, limitations of extension, and stability of the knee. These 3 ratings can get you a very high percentage, so flexion might be 30%, extension might be 50%, and stability of the knee might be, 30%. They don't add up to 110%. If you want the math, go to my video where I explain the math on compensation ratings. But again, it would help you get to 100%. Now, the con to this is that if you don't have someone that is experienced enough to help you with this filing this claim for your knee, and they put it in as a knee condition, they might give you a blanketed rating, which will cover all 3. And like a buddy of mine, he ended up getting 10% just for it, So be careful on who you get to, to file a claim, or, whether you're doing it yourself. Just know exactly what you're going to be filing for. My suggestion to you guys, I don't have a knee problem, but is filing for the, limitations of flexion first, and then the limitations of extension, and then the instability of the knee, So be careful with the blanketed, blanketing rating. I apologize for that. The other one is TBI. I have a few buddy of mine, but this is the pros and cons. The pro, buddy of mine got diagnosed with TBI and PTSD. So TBI can blanket PTSD. Well, this buddy that I was talking about, he got 2 separate ratings, one for TBI, one for PTSD, which got him to 100%. I have another buddy of mine that got the TBI, which blankets depressed moods and PTSD. So it doesn't, it gives him a percentage, but it doesn't give PTSD. You can go higher, it could go up to 100% within itself. So because it covers PTSD, it limits him on his percentage, and he's at 90%, and it's baffling the way, the system works. But you have to be careful on who does your paperwork, and you might have to go back and fight for it. Get an organization to help you out, Don't just go to anybody, because not everybody knows how, does not have your best interest. Not everybody has your best interest. And they don't know how to deal or handle any of this paperwork, or the law or the technicality to it. So again, I have to help my guys and figure it out, network with organizations to get, my guy helped out. But at the end of the day, I'm not an expert. These are just things that I come across, when talking to friends of mine that are service connected. These guys are hurt. These guys are Purple Heart recipients, coming back, and it's crazy how they're just at 90%. So again, like I said, the TBI. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, think outside of the box. So when you want your increase, the previous claims that I suggested, the previous injuries, if you have shin splints, if you have IBS, if you have carpal tunnel, neck, back, smaller ratings count. Even let's say you don't have a herniated disc or anything like that with your neck. With your back or neck, you could have a strain, and that's what your injury might fall under. But they're not going to tell you that's, when filing your claim, they're not going to tell you that. Your doctor's going to tell you that. No, you don't have a herniated disc. You have a back strain. So just know that that's what you got. And it's a small rating, but hey, at the end of the day, it's still something better than nothing. And it will help with your increase. So file many claims you rightfully deserve for injuries that has occurred while you were in service, whether it was training overseas or in the sandbox in a combat zone. Word yourself correctly. If you receive a rating you do not agree with, then gather new evidence, such as a diagnosis from a private doctor, MRI, X-rays, DBQ, Nexus letters. Then file for an increase, or get a DBQ letter, Nexus letter from your doctor and file a notice of disagreement. Whatever fits your case. Appeal the rating and play the waiting game. The worst that can happen is getting a rejection. At least you will still be able to gather more new evidence and file for an increase. Another thing I wanted to say, do not use the Nexus letter and the DBQ at the same time. It might affect your rating. Go for one and then use the other down the road, okay? At the end of the day, you'll get your increase. All right, guys? Hopefully I'm able to help you guys out. But this is everything from what I've experienced, from what my guys have experienced. This information is free, so, listen up and just follow instructions, all right, guys? Don't fuck it up. So, yeah, have a good night. Follow my YouTube account. Hit the subscription button, the alert. And if you have any questions, hit me up at CombatVetVlogger@gmail.com. All right, guys? Take care. Bye-bye.